After months of uncertainty for farmers and producers across rural Canada, there may be some relief on the horizon. Earlier this month, Ottawa announced a new trade agreement with China following a high-level meeting in Beijing between Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Chinese President Xi Jinping. That deal is expected to roll back some of the steep tariffs that have been weighing heavily on Canadian agriculture and seafood exports, tariffs that were imposed as part of an escalating trade dispute between the two countries. That dispute began in the summer of 2024, when Canada slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Canada argued at the time that those electric vehicles were being dumped on the global markets. China responded the following year with a tariff of its own, up to 100% on certain Canadian canola products, and a 25% levy on pork and seafood. Now, under the agreement signed in January, Beijing is expected to slash tariffs on Canadian canola seed to 15% by March 1st. In return, Canada will allow nearly 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles onto the Canadian market at a tariff of just over 6%, a number set to grow to roughly 70,000 vehicles within 5 years. Now, Ottawa also says tariffs on canola meal, lobster, crab, and peas could be reduced or removed entirely from March 1st through to at least the end of the year. But while the headlines focus on diplomacy and trade numbers, the real question is, what does this deal mean for on-the-ground people, for the farmers, the producers, the rural communities already facing tight margins and an uncertain growing season? One of the leading advocates and voices for canola producers throughout this entire dispute has been Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities President Bill Huber. Now, we caught up with President Huber to get his reaction to the agreement and what it could mean for rural producers as they head into the new crop season. This is Municipal Affairs.
You stepped up to serve your community. Now take your leadership to the next level. Introducing GEMS, Governance Essentials for the Municipal Sector, a practical, Saskatchewan-based training program designed for council members and those who support them. Whether newly elected or a seasoned leader, GEMS helps sharpen the skills that matter most: decision-making, accountability, financial stewardship, infrastructure oversight, and navigating the complex realities of municipal governance. This isn't your typical classroom. GEMS is flexible, online, and built for busy people. You don't need a university degree, just a commitment to good governance. For some, it's been years since taking a course. That's okay. GEMS is designed to build confidence and knowledge. There is a short assessment, but it's there to reinforce your learning, not to trip you up. If cost is a concern, talk to your administrator, as there may be grants available to offset some of the costs. Because when local leaders grow, entire communities benefit. GEMS, because good governance isn't just important, it's essential.
President, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Greatly appreciated about the most recent, I would say, news globally, but it has a major impact in the province of Saskatchewan, where Prime Minister Mark Carney and Chinese President Xi Jinping announced a new trade agreement around an ongoing dispute that they have had for the last 2 years. Looking at what has taken place in China over the last few days, what was your initial reaction when you heard the news and the agreement between Canada and China?
Well, I was actually overwhelmed. I was thought this is great news, and it is great news. It's something we've been waiting for a long time. I guess the disappointing part is it's too bad it couldn't have happened several months sooner. But
Now-
I'm certainly happy, and I think the whole industry is happy with some resolution here. It's not exactly totally what we needed, but it's certainly a start in the right direction. And I guess one thing that really that stands out is the initiative made by the Prime Minister and his invitation to our Premier Scott Moe, to attend those meetings in Beijing with him and 6 other cabinet ministers, along with Cody Blois. So I think that's very important. And I know last fall when we were in Ottawa, I met with Cody Blois at that time. he stressed the importance of having people visit China to restart some of these trade negotiations. Something that's been neglected for the last number of years, 7, 8 years, maybe longer. So I think that's a great initiative. This is the second time now since September that our Premier Mo, and federal officials have been in Ottawa. So that's great news. And even if this isn't 100% of what we want, it's certainly a start in the right direction. And we're overwhelmed by the news.
It sounds like you are very optimistic, but also very pessimistic a little bit as well, because it's not the full 100%. As of March 1st, there will be a reduction in the canola tariffs to, I believe, 15%. Looking at the agreement that was signed, does this announcement bring relief to canola producers that are about to plant their crops in a few months?
Well, it certainly does, but most producers, they have to start making their seeding plans a lot earlier than this, and of course marketing plans. So it is, it's better now than any later. I mean, every day counts, but producers mostly have a lot of their seed ordered. But I think this certainly helps with their final decisions, and we haven't seen a real rally in prices yet. But the tariffs don't officially come off till March 1st. So hopefully we see some activity there on the futures market where we see some upward movement and resume trade and actually see some shipments of seed canola going to China out of the West Coast.
Looking back on the last 2 years, I remember in 2025, I think it was that the SARM convention in Saskatchewan, where this conversation around tariffs on canola was starting to rear its head. This last year has kind of been a challenging year for canola producers, and we don't know what the effects will be over the next few months as we head into this new trade agreement. What's the next steps for canola producers? What's the next step that SARM has to do to ensure that that 15% as of March 1st gets down to that 0% that is needed?
Well, we're optimistic that the Premier and the federal officials haven't given up on this yet. This is a start, and the removal of the tariffs on electric vehicles and allowing a certain number, I think it's 49,000 into Canada. It hurts the auto industry, but I think Premier Ford has to understand, and I think the Premier explained it very well in his comments, where he has a good relationship with Premier Ford, and we're all going to have differences. Each and every one of us do every day, and I think those things can be worked out. And the agriculture industry and the canola industry in this country are huge contributors to the GDP compared to the auto industry. I'm not saying we don't need an auto industry. We certainly do. And we need to have jobs in Ontario just as well as we need them in Saskatchewan and Western Canada. But I think it's a start, and I'm confident that our Premier and federal officials, along with the Premier of Ontario, can work together to have a resolve, and we work to being in a better place in the months and year ahead.
SARM is the voice of rural Saskatchewan, and that means many canola producers are members of rural municipalities. I know this is still early days. We're recording this only a few short days after the announcement was made between China and Canada. What has been the on-the-ground reaction from canola producers that you have spoken to about what this means and where the path forward for canola goes in this province of Saskatchewan?
Well, it's great news. Most producers, I would say 95% of the ones I've talked to or listened to, are very happy with the announcement and upbeat. I guess the disappointing part is, canola prices still seem pretty depressed. There has been a wee bit of movement in the last week or so, even before the tariffs were removed, where we've seen some future contracts and targets being triggered. But it's not any too soon, because a lot of crop input costs are have to be paid for by mid-March or at the end of March, and some at the end of January. And producers are short of cash flow this year. It's canola prices have been certainly in the lower end of where we need them to be, and all cereals and other commodities are struggling too to have some profitability in the market price that we're receiving here.
We are just 19 days into 2026. I can't imagine this would be a conversation you and I would be having, but here we are in the middle of January, looking at the outcome for rural municipalities in the province of Saskatchewan. How significant is this new trade agreement for the rural economies of and municipalities in the province?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity. Our main trading country is the United States. They're our closest and biggest customer. China is second. But I was a little disappointed in Carney's statements in the media, on another note, other than when he was talking with the premier on these tariffs. But he declares an end of the U.S. trade dependency. And, in my mind, we still need the United States, even though there is some uncertainty there with tariffs and what's going to happen in the days ahead. But, the U.S. remains to be our biggest and closest customer. China second, and India third. And that's for canola oil, canola seed, meal, pulses, pork especially. Their pork prices are depressed seriously in the last number of years. And, beef wasn't mentioned in these tariff trades either. But I guess maybe that's because the beef prices are relatively as high as they've been in many, many years, or in history maybe. So, there isn't a concern there of exporting a lot of beef to China just right now. But, we have to, make sure that every market door is open for us. And that's one thing about the Premier in the province of Saskatchewan. We've opened that market. I think we export to 161 countries now. And that's valuable when you run into situations like this with uncertainty across the border to the south and countries like China and India putting tariffs on or trade restrictions. And it's still a competitive market worldwide. We're not the only country that grows canola. We've got Australia and Argentina, Brazil, some of those major producing countries. So, it's all going to be taken in stride.
You've mentioned Premier Scott Moe a few times during our interview so far, and we are recording this one day prior to his press conference that he is holding in Saskatoon about this trade agreement and the challenge and the path forward for Saskatchewan producers. Now, I'm not going to ask you what he's going to say, but I'm going to ask you, looking at the work that Premier Moe has done over the last few years, and even yourself alongside the Premier and the provincial government, how important is it to have that collaborative approach when addressing these ongoing global challenges, whether they be tariffs or trade? Because you said it so eloquently at the beginning. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, extended a hand to Scott Moe to attend the ceremony in China, and now we have an agreement in place. How important is collaboration along all levels of government to address these issues?
Oh, it's very important. And I think this is just the start of it. And I hope things like this continue, with trade talks, even when we're not in desperate situations where we need tariffs removed as soon as possible. But just that dialogue, with other countries and trading partners, and make sure that we have people, visiting these countries. And a lot of us, have been in business. I have been, and your customer is always right, and we got to make sure that the customer is looked after. And whether it's China or the United States or India, we need to respect their business and appreciate it, and do things that keep that door open, that we have continued trade and continued dialogue and relationship with these countries.
Does it give you hope what happened in China, between China and Canada, that we could see more movement on the Canada-US file? Because you said it right. Canada and US are both the biggest trading partners, and Saskatchewan exports a lot of canola down south as well. So does it give you hope that we could potentially reach an agreement in 2026 with our largest trading partner? Or, as you said, you're still cautious because of what Prime Minister Carney said about the trade challenges between the two countries?
Well, I guess what Carney said, doesn't close the door. It's just that, basically that we don't totally depend. It's a trade dependency on the U.S. So I think that door is still there, and I don't assume that they'd restrict trade there or sales there if the opportunity comes. which it will, especially on oil and meal. But we got to keep every door open, and every customer is valuable to us, and those relationships are, they're not built overnight. They're something that takes years to build, and the trust and food security and reliability on a safe, healthy product going to these countries is valuable too. So I think that's something that Canada has been, has a great reputation on.
I want to talk about the future for a second, if you don't mind, before I let you go, Bill. And looking back on the last year and a half, canola producers have been put through a lot. Now, the market has not rebounded to where it needs to be to help our canola producers a little bit off this year. Are you optimistic about the canola production in the province of Saskatchewan heading into 2026?
Yeah, I am, and I hope everyone is, because we do have to produce a lot of canola. We're very fortunate in Saskatchewan to have the crush plants and the crush available that we do, and that's supported us as producers through this troubling time since last March. There hasn't been much seed shipped out of Canada in the last year, or since last March, in the last 10 months at least. So it's good that we've got these crush plants, and at least oil is moving, and it's gave producers an opportunity to at least deliver on that market and keep a little bit of cash flow going to help sustain their operations.
Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic looking at the state of the ground right now, looking at 2026, with one of the biggest files that you and I have probably chatted about a few times over the last year, maybe officially off the table? And while it's still uncertain, you might not have to talk about it as much as you have to talk about other things.
Well, I'm certainly optimistic about canola. I think there's a bright future in growing canola, and we're a great producer of canola. But something that really concerns each and every farmer and producer today and rancher is our input costs. I did some calculations here about a month ago, and go back 4 years, we were selling canola for $22.60 a bushel. That was kind of the mid-range, the average of it at that time. Wheat was $12, malt barley $10. So those prices are basically reduced in half. And our input costs have gone up 30 to 40% just on actual fixed costs. And that's not considering machinery costs and repairs and things like that. So, we're in some challenging times, but as producers, we wouldn't be here if we weren't optimistic and resilient. And when the going gets tough, the tough get going, I guess.
Looking at this beyond this deal for a moment, what do you, as president of SARM and even the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities in general, want to see from the federal government to ensure producers manage this trade-related uncertainty in the future, so we don't get to where we were last year, where it kind of seemed like the sky was falling and canola producers were up creek without a paddle?
Well, I think our federal officials and our people that are marketing canola and our grain companies have to be optimistic and still looking for those markets, and and making sure that we have a consistent supply to ship on time and get it to port facilities. So there's no vessel sitting in port waiting for a product to get into a port facility to load a vessel. So those are all things that count, and I think working together with our trading partners and our grain companies, I think we should see improvement in the months and days ahead, and it'll strengthen and get better as time moves on. In agriculture, we sometimes run into these little roadblocks, and it's nothing new. It happens quite regularly in my lifetime as an agriculture producer. So we're optimistic. We have to be, and I certainly think we're on the right road for the time being anyway.
So what's your final message to rural producers in Saskatchewan today who are weighing risks and rewards heading into this growing season?
Well, I think we always struggle with markets, and we're looking for the best ones and the highest prices, but we're going to continue to see ups and downs in markets and challenges, and whether it's in market trends or whether it's in weather related issues, it's droughts or weather events that affect our yields. But one thing that SARM is pushing for, and we're going to try and do, is work together to have some better risk management programs in place. That's where we struggle. We have Saskatchewan crop insurance, and which has worked very well in the past, but everything needs a change and a revisit every once in a while. We need some changes there, and we certainly need to see some changes in agri-stability and some of these safety net programs. And we need a program that responds quickly to producers in disastrous times. And I'm not talking about a devastating windstorm or a hailstorm. I mean, a drought that continues to last for more than a year or 2 years, where producers are really challenged on yields and, cash flow to meet their rising input costs.
Well, President Huber, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Always a pleasure to chat with you. I'm so glad that we were able to chat less than almost a month from the last time we chatted in 2025. So thank you so much for doing this. And I look forward to this ongoing discussion as this unfolds. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you again, Chris, for your kind remarks and your opportunity to participate in this podcast. So it's great. Look forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in for another edition of Municipal Affairs. This show is where we take a closer look at the people, the policies, and the practical decisions shaping local governments across Canada. Now, each episode is designed to dig beneath the headlines and bring you forward real conversations about the challenges and, yes, even the opportunities facing municipalities of all sizes, both urban and rural. Now, if today's discussion was useful or even thought-provoking, we encourage you to subscribe to the show, leave a review if possible, and share this episode with your colleagues, your council members, or any municipally minded individual who cares about strong local governance. Visit crossbordernetwork.ca to learn about how you can join us on a future episode of Municipal Affairs and contribute to the national conversation around local politics. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and thanks again for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs.